Hi, everyone. My name is Kunal Arroya, Executive Director for the Recruiters Network, and welcome to the Discovery Call, the show where we learn about new technologies and how they're currently being used today to solve some challenging problems in the recruiting and human resources industry. And today, we're joined by Enterprise Account Executive Jeff Torbeck. As a Mustang and graduate from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, Jeff has had over 12 years experience selling various softwares at companies like Salesforce, Blue Jeans, and LinkedIn. And most recently, Jeff joined the team over at Hired to help recruiting teams build a predictable pipeline of talent and help everyone find a job they love. Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Kunal, thanks for having me.
Can you talk about what Hired is and what they're doing really great today that you're excited about?
Sure. So Hired is a two-sided marketplace. And the whole reason this company was created 7 years ago was because our founders saw a void of how do you get tech talent to respond to you and how do you scale your business quickly? And the best way to scale businesses is to make sure your product is able to scale and you're able to build roadmaps out with that. And you can't do that without the right tech talent. And they all kind of saw the issue of how do you scale quickly? How do you compete for talent? Now, as we're getting into 2020, there's all these shortages of actual qualified tech workers that are out there, and that's why we're seeing boot camps and things like that step up. So there's a lot of companies now doing the same thing. So there's a lot of smaller and medium-sized companies that are all in the same space, and they're all fighting for the same candidates. So how do you really find those people that are looking for a new job? And that's really where Hired comes in. So we're a two-sided marketplace that allows active candidates to be reached out to by active companies, and the benefits on both sides, right? So for the candidate, it allows them to really put themselves out there and say, this is what I'm looking for in a next job. Here's what I've done. This is what I would really like to do, whether it's the mission, the type of work, the type of skills they want to leverage. And so that gives them the ability to put themselves out there with having to scan through, career pages and job boards and things like that, where they never hear back. They never know, was that job not filled? Was I not qualified for it? Did they just not see my resume? All these unanswered questions that they have no idea what they're talking about. And the advantage to it is on the employer side is that they can get fast, active candidates to respond quickly. We have a 90% response rate and over a 55% interview rate. And so we always like to talk about it like there's a lot of people that get a lot of good inbound with candidates or good quality of people, but how do you get people to actually have those conversations to understand what your organization is all about? And when you have over a 55% interview rate, we always look at it as if your team just sends 10 interview requests a week, you can see at least 5 to 7 interviews that week, and your team can spend more time focusing on their product versus trying to go out there and find the right people.
As a candidate in the market, it's always really nice to hear feedback, which you don't usually get via email. So if you find an avenue in which you can get feedback of why you weren't necessarily hired to take on with you, I think that's an important feature.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Hired is big on transparency. So whether it's, rejection reasons for the candidate, why the candidate was rejected or why the candidate rejected that company, that can be beneficial on both sides. The other big piece is just transparency through the whole process. What is that candidate really looking for? What are salary expectations? I think in today's world, especially when you're talking about like Silicon Valley and Seattle and those type of areas, tech talent is so sought after that in certain areas or certain roles, salaries can be really inflated. And so having the transparency to understand what is really the going rate and how can you actually compete is second to none when you have a platform that bleeds transparency like we do.
I love that. And speaking of salary and transparency, I know that Hired every year comes out with a few reports, including, your esteemed brand health report, wage inequality, amongst others.
What Hired's trying to do with our reports is give the best, most transparent view of what's going on. So all of our reports come from actual offer letters and actual salaries that we confirm with the candidate and the companies to make sure that it's not self-reported data. The challenge that can go with self-reported data is people can include bonuses or sign-ons or relocation fees, or sometimes they just bump their salary up 10% or 10K just because they feel like that's what they were worth, or maybe that's what they felt like they negotiated. And that's when we start seeing the salaries really starting to inflate. A year ago, I remember talking to a company in the Bay Area, and they're saying like DevOps people with 2 years of experience aren't worth 200K. And the answer is they aren't, but there are some people that are going to get that. And listen, depending on a company's need, some companies are willing to pay whatever if they need that role to take their product to 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever they need to do to take them to the next phase. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the norm, and every candidate should be worth that.
I love that. And so, talking a little bit about the salary and transparency, there's been a lot of conversation these days about that salary expectations up front. And from my past
Hmm.
experience, I know that Hired is very transparent with that. Is that something you can talk about? What have you learned in the industry, sort of selling and having these conversations with hiring teams about having that salary transparency from a candidate side up front, and is that something that we're going to see as a trend coming forward into 2020?
Yeah, and I think it's a trend we're going to see everywhere. So actually, Denver has actually just instated a new law that I believe it's either by 2020 or 2021. I can't remember exactly, but we actually had an event out there, and we're talking to a bunch of HR leaders in Denver that they just passed a law that's going to require companies to actually list the salary range for that job on the job posting. And so what that tells you is salary transparency is the top, right? Everybody wants to know. Companies want it, and candidates want it. Everybody hates that awkward conversation of like, okay, how long do I hold out on what my salary expectations are until the offer comes? Because the candidate wants to feel like they're getting getting a good offer from the company, and the company wants to feel like they're getting a good deal on that candidate. But it's like, these are people and these are like your business. It shouldn't be like used cars, right? You shouldn't feel like you're getting a good deal. You both should feel like you're getting what you're worth. And I think that's where the transparency comes through. Candidates want to be able to say, like, this is what I prefer as a salary, this is what I believe I'm worth. And companies should have the data to say, like, yes, that is in the range. Or when you talk about like the wage gap, whether it's gender based or racially based, it's important to understand, and it's important for the companies to be able to say, like, actually you're asking a little bit low of your range, you should be asking in this range. So I think it it falls on both of them, but I think the transparency for salary is only going to become more and more important to do early in the conversation, because A, you can make sure you understand, are we in the same ballpark? Because obviously somebody expecting 200K is never going to take a 100K job. But
Mhm.
more importantly, I think it'll take a lot of the awkwardness out of the interview process, solely because of the fact of everybody will understand kind of what's out there. Lay your cards out on the table early, and then have the conversation from there, instead of kind of holding everything back until the end and then having this like grudge match negotiation that people have typically had in the past.
So, talking about the salary up front and really finding candidates that are a good fit for the role. I know it's public knowledge by now that Hired acquired a technical assessments company, Pi.
Hmm.
With the acquisition, the team launched what's being called Hired Assessments. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why people should be excited?
Yeah, so we acquired Pi, we rebranded it to Hired Assessments, and we finally have just put it into our platform so that as candidates come on, they can actually take a pre-assessment, so a tech screen, so that companies can then watch the playback and understand kind of their coding ability level, because obviously we score them. But more importantly, Pi and Hired Assessments allows you to watch each keystroke so that you as an employer can really understand how does that software engineer or coder approach that problem. Did they get halfway through the scenario, run a test, realize they only got 50% correct, and then go back and fix something? Or maybe they run it and they get 80%, they realize where their mistake was, and then they do the whole thing over, have a different approach, and they get 100% on it. That really gives you the insight into how do they approach a problem. Because what we see is companies don't necessarily need the best Java person or the best you know Python person or things like that. What they're looking for is good coders overall with the basic knowledge of it. Obviously, they do want to have expertise in certain languages, but then companies generally shift languages as they grow in organizations, or add languages and things like that. And so they want to have good software engineers on their team that can adapt well, and are just good software folks overall, because that's going to ultimately make the product better. With the acquisition of Pi and now putting into Hired Assessments, now we can give companies the access to pre-assess candidates, and more importantly, they can also create their own custom tech screens or on-site coding challenges and things like that, so they can really get a deeper understanding of what is the ability of this person that they're trying to hire, man, woman, female, male, anything like that. Beyond that, and that can also help you with diversity now too, because now we have these things where you can have a bias filter on and just look at somebody's background, look at what they got on the coding test, and go right to an onsite or something close to that, to where you can take some of this unconscious bias out of the recruiting process and really increase your diversity by just taking steps out of the process.
So you talking a little bit about a bias filter. What is that? Can you dig on that a little bit?
Yeah, so our bias filter actually removes names and photos of it. And the reason for that is we just want companies to be able to look at what's their ability, what's their background, what's their experience, what skills do they know, and look at that person holistically instead of what they look like, what their name is, what color their skin is, and things like that. And not saying that people are, consciously ruling people out, but there's also these affinity biases, right? We kind of coin it internally as like, would you grab a beer with this person, right? People tend to hang out with folks that look like them or behave like them, or would go have a beer with them or something like that. By hiding names and photos and things like that, it takes any unconscious bias out there, and it allows you put everybody on an equal floor of, hey, all these people have 4+ years of experience, they know these 3 languages, they want to work in this market, they've had the similar type of background, they obviously might not have gone to the same school or had the exact same companies behind, but they're all looking for the exact same thing. And then you can assess them through hired assessments to say, like, okay, person A is better at this skill, person B is better at this skill, and then move the people along that you want before you even got into the message of, what does this person look like? Are they male or female? What's their cultural background? That kind of stuff. It's very, very important in today's world when companies want to look at diversity. Taking that unconscious bias out is one of the hardest things to do because it's not like people are trying to do it out there, but that always slips into the conversation.
No, absolutely. So it seems as if there are several benefits of using something like Hired. And I'm sure you've been a part of many conversations on the sell with folks that, understand uh, what Hired's doing enough and the value that you're bringing to do some form of trial or even purchase. But I'm curious from a sales perspective on the enterprise side, what do you say to the naysayers or those that have the always, um, scared to change, or if it's not broken, why fix it mentality? What's the conversation there?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are like, there's the adverse to change, and I think there's also there's a lot of you don't know what you don't know out there. I mean, there's always different approaches to different problems, and some people are open to doing things differently and some aren't. What we're seeing is most of the people that didn't know about Hired are very excited about what they see. A lot of people and a lot of organizations have the same challenge when it comes to tech talent. There just isn't enough out there to go around. And then when you want to talk about specific talent, whether it's certain levels of experience or like the type of role, so like data scientists, DevOps people, those people that are more specialized anyway, that there aren't a ton of those people out there, you start making it harder and harder to find those folks or get them to respond. The world, I think, of passive talent for tech for as a strategy for tech talent is moving away, and the reason for that is people move so quickly these days, with the average time in seat being 2 years. I don't think we're going to see that person that works for HP or Apple for 35 years like our parents did and things like that. And so companies have to be able to put themselves in a position that when a good engineer or a good tech talent is ready to make a move, that they're putting themselves in front of those folks. Otherwise, they're going to miss out on really good talent that's out there.
No, I love that. And so, wrapping up a little bit here, I'm curious, what can you tell us or tell the folks here that's sort of coming down the roadmap from Hired? What is there to expect in the coming years? What are they looking forward to be excited about?
Yeah, I think there's further partnerships, and I think there's more transparency. I think that's what we're really looking for. More tools out there and more features out there to help you with diversity hiring, to make your team more set up for it. And just to be clear, diversity is all about taking out bias. It's not about like saying, hey, we need more women or we need more men or we need a certain um, race or something like that. It's about looking at the whole pool of talent and having a diverse pool of talent. So you're going to see us a lot more partnerships with more organizations out there. Like we're at Grace Hopper this week. Women that code, Black women that code, to get better diversity into our pool, and then a lot more features down the line to not only make your team more efficient, but to also help make them more diverse as they hire through the platform.
So I guess the last question here, Jeff, and as everyone would probably want to ask, right? The one that's on everyone's mind. If we wanted to move forward with Hired, what is Hired going to cost, and how do you see teams justifying budget for something like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to kind of give you a cost. It depends on your team structure, your team size, and things like that. But most people are looking at Hired as the end-all solution for their tech recruiting. And so we offer subscription packages that allow you for unlimited hiring, so you guys can actually set a budget and understand what you're going to spend on tech talent. And it really depends on the seats that you're looking to buy. And so seats are squarely who has the ability to reach out to candidates. And obviously, the more people that you want to have the ability to reach out and have access to the platform, the higher the cost. The less you do, the lower the cost. So happy to chat with anybody that has questions about that. Kind of moving forward here.
Right on. Well, you heard it here, folks. Jeff, want to thank you for taking the time to join us today. With the time we have left, is there anything else you would like the people to know?
No, just that Hired is out there trying to really bring transparency to hiring. We do a lot of good things and a lot of good annual reports. There's our state of salaries report. There's our wage and gender gap report. We also just released our brand health that ranks what candidates are really looking for out of organizations that they're looking for today. And then we also, at the beginning of the year, released a report on the state of just the software developer from the candidate view. So when your organizations really are looking to really understand the tech recruiting process, what candidates are looking for, what companies are looking for, Hired.com is a good opportunity for you guys to learn through our reports about not only what companies are saying, but what the candidates are saying and looking for as well.
Awesome. Love it. Thanks again, Jeff. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Kunal.